Have you ever felt that the more good, understanding, and kind-hearted you are, the less people see you? That your gentleness does not protect you from being hurt? Quite the opposite. It attracts those who seek easy access to your soul. Carl Jung warned, "Ignorance of your shadow makes you a victim." And many good people don't know that it's not their light that attracts predators, but their lack of boundaries. Kindness does not protect. That's a myth. Kindness that does not know its shadow, does not set boundaries, does not say enough, becomes transparent, invisible. People don't respect it because they don't feel its power. The world doesn't listen to those who don't defend themselves. And if you don't protect yourself, you will be chosen not because you are valuable, but because you are available. This kind of love has nothing to do with seeing your soul. It's just choosing an easy target. For many good people, the biggest shock is not that they have been betrayed. It is that they have been betrayed by those to whom they gave the most. This is no accident. It is an echo of an inner dynamic. If your kindness has no limits, people will test how far they can go. Not because of evil, but because of the nature of energy. Jung said everything that is not conscious returns as fate, and ignorance of your own energy, needs, frustrations, anger, and fear makes you not only invisible, it makes you vulnerable. In childhood, many of us learned that being good is a way to survive, to deserve, calming others down so as not to feel threatened. But this strategy stops working in adulthood. It becomes a prison, a mask, an illusion that if you are good enough, people will love you. But it doesn't work, because boundless goodness is like a house without doors. Anyone can come in, and not everyone leaves without causing damage. You are not safe because you are good. You are safe if you are aware. If your kindness comes from freedom, not fear. If you can be sensitive, but also firm. If you can give, but also refuse. If you can love, but also walk away when necessary, because only then do others see you for who you really are, not as a source of resources, but as a person, as a being with their own inner world, boundaries and dignity. Many good people feel that the world does not see them, but the truth is more painful. The world sees them all too well as those who pose no threat. That is why there is no resistance to using them. Their yes has no weight. Their no does not exist because it was never said. And what is not said is erased. And so a good person becomes invisible, not because of their soul, but because of their emotional absence. Kindness without power does not heal. Kindness that does not protect the soul becomes merely a form of emotional suicide, because without boundaries, your energy leaks out. Without anger, your love has no power. Without truth, your relationships become a field of exploitation. And this is what Jung said: you cannot be whole if you deny your darkness, and only by being whole do you become visible and safe. Anger that you don't express doesn't go away. It locks itself in your body. It eats your muscles. It tenses your neck. It freezes your breath. It stops your voice. Carl Jung warned that everything that is repressed does not disappear. It comes back, but it comes back differently. As illness, as depression, as an outburst that doesn't fit the situation, as self-harm, as silent suffering. And the most tragic thing about all this is that the good person, the one who doesn't want to hurt anyone, ends up hurting the most themselves. Anger is the energy of boundaries. It is the instinct that says, "This hurts me, I disagree, go away, this is crossing the line." But many of us, raised in a culture of politeness, have learned that anger is dangerous, that expressing anger is a spiritual failure. That anger equals aggression, brutality, ego. That's why good people have learned to suppress it, to clench their jaws, to smile when it hurts, to say, "It's okay," when everything is screaming, "No." But the body doesn't lie. The body always remembers. The body doesn't forgive what the soul cannot say. Anger is not a problem. The problem is that you are not connecting with it. that you are afraid of it instead of listening to it, that you push it away instead of letting it speak, and when you don't listen to it, you attract those who will make use of it. You unconsciously allow others to express what you don't want to touch in yourself. And then you become a victim, because your energy has no limits, because your body says no, but your mouth says yes. Because in trying to be good, you become vulnerable to violence, control, and manipulation. Anger is spiritual. It is sacred. It is the voice of your inner guardian. Jung would say, it is the archetypal power of Mars, the power of action, defense, setting boundaries, saying enough. But to regain it, you must descend into the underworld, to those places within yourself that you avoid. To the memories where you learned that your emotions are a threat. To the moments when your anger was ridiculed, punished, ignored. Because as long as you are afraid of your anger, your relationships are not relationships. They are a battlefield where you always lose because you do not consciously engage in it. Did you know that most depression in good people is not sadness? It is anger that had nowhere to go. Anger that came back inside. Anger that was turned against itself. What was supposed to be protection became a prison. Because if you've never said, I don't agree, stop, that hurts me, then all that tension has settled inside you. And now your soul is suffering, not because you're bad, but because you're too good for others and too cruel to yourself. This is not a call to explode. This is not an encouragement to hurt. It is an invitation to talk to yourself, to dialogue with the inner power that has been suppressed for years, to meet the inner warrior whose heart is pure, but whose sword is sharp. Because anger is not for attack. Anger is for defending the soul. Anger is like fire. It can burn down a house or warm you on a cold night. It all depends on whether you are aware of it, and if you are not, then others will come, and they will express your anger for you. They will despise you, manipulate you, rule you, and you will feel smaller and smaller, more and more tired, more and more extinguished, until finally you believe that there is something wrong with you, that your kindness is weakness, that your sensitivity is a problem. But that's not true. The problem is not your kindness. The problem is that you allow it to be your only language. Anger is not the opposite of love. It is its weapon. It is its guardian. When you love yourself, you become ready to defend yourself. And when you become ready to defend yourself, your kindness ceases to be a favor to others and becomes a gift that is not for sale. Because only those who know their anger can truly love, without fear, without dependence, without losing yourself. So, if you are a good person who is constantly suffering, ask yourself, where is my anger? Where have I hidden it? When was the last time I allowed myself to feel that fire inside me, without shame, without fear, without the need to explain myself? Because if you don't accept it, it will find another door. It will enter your body as pain, your heart as coldness, your relationships as drama, your psyche as a silent scream, and finally, your life as someone else's anger that will sweep you away. It is not anger that is dangerous. It is the lack of it that is deadly. In every good person there is something that they themselves fear, something they don't want to see, something they repress as bad, unworthy, inhuman. That something is their shadow, but a shadow is not a monster. It is not just violence, jealousy, or selfishness. It is also the strength you have suppressed because you have learned that you are not allowed to have it. And the most paradoxical and painful thing is that you have most often suppressed anger. Holy anger. The kind that does not destroy but protects. The kind that does not hurt but says enough. The kind that is not a cry of the ego, but the voice of the soul. Carl Jung used to say that you cannot be whole unless you look at your shadow. And the shadow of a good person is everything they were not allowed to express because they were well behaved. That is where the anger they never expressed lives. That is where the strength they never used lives. That is where the truth they kept silent so as not to offend anyone lives. It is there in this exiled place that his inner warrior waits, unused, rusty, forgotten, but still ready to defend him, if only he lets him. For a good person, the shadow is something shameful, because he wants to be the light, he wants to bring peace, he wants to love, support, protect, give. But it is this ideal of purity and selflessness that leads him to self-contradiction, because light that knows no shadow has no depth. It is flat, it is unreal, it is fragile, and that is why so many good people are so deeply wounded, because they have no access to their power, because they are afraid of it, because they have cut themselves off from it, and the world knows it, the world feels it. Those who prey on the energy of others are not afraid of those who are evil, because evil is predictable, but they fear those who know their shadow and have tamed it, because such people have boundaries, they have instinct, they have a language that says, "This is my space, don't cross it." Goodness without a shadow is like an open door without a guard. Anyone can come in, and those who come in don't always want to stay. Sometimes they just want to take what is most precious, your energy, your love, your sensitivity. That is why Jung said, what annoys you in others may be a projection of your own shadow. But just as often, what you admire in others is also your shadow. If you see someone's courage, uncompromising nature, power, and think, "I wish I could be like that," it means that it is in you, but it has been suppressed. Because someone once told you to be nice, to smile, not to raise your voice, not to overdo it, and you believed that your power was something bad, that your anger was a threat, that your boundaries were selfishness, and that's not true. It is in the shadow of your kindness that your strength lies, and it is not a bad force. It is not the energy of violence. It is holy anger, the kind that burns not to destroy, but to burn away the illusion that you have to shrink to deserve love. This anger is the energy of life. It is your no to what hurts you. It is your voice saying, "I will not allow this." It is your courage that brings you face to face with what you have feared all your life, yourself, when you stop being polite. But for that to happen, you have to go lower. You have to dive deeper into yourself than ever before. You have to look at those moments when you were hurt and said nothing. At those moments when your kindness was used against you. At those relationships in which you were too forgiving, too empathetic, too available, and in which you were abandoned, betrayed, used. Because until you name that wound, your soul will bleed in silence. And no one will notice because you are so good, so nice, so lovable. But beneath that mask is a power waiting to be unleashed. Not so that you can be tough, but so that you can be whole. So that you no longer have to choose between being good and being real. Because true goodness is not afraid of its anger. True light knows its darkness. True love has boundaries, and if you want to stop suffering, you have to stop being afraid of your shadow. You have to invite it to the table, listen to what it has to say, what emotions it carries within itself, what memories, what hurts you haven't spoken about, and then let it speak with your voice. Don't shout, don't hurt, but speak with power, with clarity, with courage. I will no longer allow my goodness to be my prison. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is what will save you if you stop rejecting it, because it is the shadow that teaches you how to be good, not at your own expense, but with strength in your heart. How to say yes from a place of truth, not fear. How to be present, not only where it is easy, but also where you need to set boundaries, sometimes alone. Sometimes against all odds, because in the end, you're not good if you are afraid of yourself. You're good when you are whole, with pain, with anger, with tenderness, with shadow. And only then does your light truly have power. Kindness that needs to be defended is not kindness. It is a survival strategy. It is not love, but fear in disguise. And a good person, if they don't see this mechanism in themselves, will be a prisoner of other people's gaze their whole life. They will be polite, but not free. Warm, but burnt out inside. Sensitive, but invisible. They will play a role that gives them a momentary feeling of being needed, but it takes away their access to their own soul. Jung said it clearly. Who you really are is revealed when you stop pretending. But many of us do not know who we are, precisely because we have had to play a role our whole lives. To play the good child, the well-behaved student, the perfect partner, the calm person. Because from an early age we have learned that acceptance is not unconditional, that love is a reward for good behavior, and rejection, punishment for being yourself. In such a psychological structure, goodness becomes not something natural but a tool, a mask. Armor to protect against loneliness. And this is where the drama of the good person begins, because they really want to love. They want to be supportive. They want to be a light. But as long as their kindness is a reaction to the fear of being inadequate, it is neither free nor real. It is a transaction, a silent one. I'll be good so you won't leave me. I'll sacrifice myself so you'll notice me. I'll be understanding so you won't reject me. And every such good deed has a shadow, a hidden desire for recognition, a hunger for love, a desperation to survive. This is not evil. It does not make you a manipulator. It makes you someone who is wounded, someone who believes they don't deserve love simply because they exist. Someone who has been taught that they must do something, give something, prove something to deserve attention. Someone who had to adapt too early to an emotionally unstable world of adults who expected politeness rather than authenticity. This is why so many good people cannot say no. This is why they fear confrontation. This is why they suppress their anger, hide their needs, and withdraw from their own truth. Because deep down, there is still that little boy, that little girl who is afraid that if they stop being nice, they will be left alone. And they build their entire adult life on this one unconscious strategy: be good to survive. But this kind of goodness is a trap. The more you try to prove it, the more you lose it, because true goodness doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't shout, "Look how hard I'm trying." It doesn't beg, "Notice how much I'm doing for you." True goodness comes from abundance, not from lack. From strength, not from need. From choice, not from compulsion. There's a difference between being good and having to be good. The latter kills you slowly. It makes you give up on yourself to maintain an image. It makes you let others cross your boundaries because you are afraid that saying no will destroy the relationship. It makes you stay silent when you should speak up. You apologize when you should set boundaries. You smile when your soul is screaming in pain, and that is why, paradoxically, people stop respecting you. Not because you are bad, but because your goodness is not connected to your strength. And where there is no strength, there are no boundaries. And where there are no boundaries, trust ends. Because others feel, even if they don't say it, that behind your smile there is a need. That your "I'll help you" is often "I beg you, see me." And such a relationship is like a house without foundations. Sooner or later it will collapse. So if you really want to be a good person, stop trying to be one. Start being yourself. Start telling the truth. Start setting boundaries. Start getting angry when you need to. Start saying no when you don't want to. Start protecting yourself before you start saving the world. Because only then will your kindness become something real. Something that comes from within. Something that doesn't seek validation, but is an expression of your soul. Jung once said, "You don't become enlightened by imagining yourself in a place of light. but by becoming aware of the darkness. The same is true of kindness. You don't become a truly kind person by repeating to yourself that you are nice. You will only become one when you see why you need to prove it so much, and you allow yourself to stop. Stop explaining yourself. Stop being afraid. Stop shrinking. So that no one feels inferior around you because your soul didn't come here to be nice. It came here to be real, and that sometimes means being uncomfortable, rejected, lonely, but only for a moment, because in that loneliness you will meet those who don't need your mask. You will meet those who don't want your politeness, but your truth, and that will be the first time your kindness is no longer a transaction, but a gift. In a world that values superficiality and conformity so much, being nice often becomes a social obligation rather than a free choice. From an early age, we are taught that politeness is a way to gain approval, avoid conflict, and blend in with the crowd. We learn to say what is expected of us instead of what we really feel. We wear masks so as not to disturb the appearance of harmony, which, though fragile and artificial, allows us to function. But is another layer of social artificiality really what the world needs? Does the world want another person who remains silent, suppressing their thoughts and feelings so as not to upset others? Carl Jung's answer is painful but liberating. The world needs something else. It needs your true, unvarnished authenticity. Authenticity is something much more primal and powerful than politeness. It is a state of being that comes from the center of your being, from your soul and body, speaking with one voice. It is a willingness to show yourself fully, with all your complexity, ambiguity, and contradictions. It is the courage to stand before the world, not as someone who conforms to expectations, but as someone who lives in harmony with themselves, even if it means risking rejection or misunderstanding. Jung taught that true human strength comes from integration, from the combination of light and shadow, good and anger, gentleness and assertiveness. It is in this wholeness that we are truly present and real to others. The world that screams and fights to pull another mask off us is actually longing for the truth, for what is real and not fake. The mask of politeness is often an attempt to avoid confrontation and hide one's fears. It hides our shadow, our true power and authentic emotions. And although it may give us a momentary sense of security, in the long run it leads to alienation from ourselves and from others. Because when we suppress our true selves, we create a void that others sense and react to with aversion or distance. Imagine an old, powerful river that has been flowing in the same bed for centuries. Its current is calm, predictable, but at the same time dormant without the life that pulsates in its depths. Now think of a storm breaking through the surface, stirring the water and revealing the power of the river that no one expected. This storm is your authenticity, violent, unpredictable, yet real and powerful. Being authentic does not mean being aggressive or rude. It means having the courage to express yourself in a way that is consistent with who you are, even if it means being unpopular or lonely. It is rejecting the illusion of politeness as a path to acceptance and embracing your total presence, with your wounds, fears, desires, and hopes. Jung points out that people who live authentically, though sometimes perceived as difficult or weird, are the ones who truly inspire and transform the world. This is because their energy is real and their relationships are deep and genuine. They do not need to prove their worth. Their strength comes from integrity, from the harmony between what they think, what they feel, and how they behave. In turn, a world that has become accustomed to superficial politeness often reacts to authenticity with distrust or even hostility. This is natural because truth always creates tension. Truth shatters illusions and forces us to confront our own shadows. But it is only through this confrontation that real change and healing are possible. kindness that comes from authenticity is like a fire on a cold night, real, alive, and unstoppable. It does not fade in the face of difficulties, nor does it die out under the pressure of others' expectations. It is the living breath of a soul that has ceased to be afraid to show its true face. So the question is, do you want to continue playing the role of the nice person who pleases others but is empty and invisible? Or are you ready to take off that mask and show the world who you really are? Because only then does your presence have power. Only then do your relationships have a chance to be real. Only then does kindness become a true gift, not a burden. So take Jung's challenge. Don't be another image painted on the surface. Become a river that flows in its own current, full of depth and life. Let your authenticity be the light that pierces the darkness of appearances and hypocrisy. Let your truth be the sound that resonates in the hearts of others and awakens them to life. Because the world doesn't need another polite person. The world needs you, the real, whole, courageous you. In a world where boundaries are often invisible and our desires and needs are drowned out by social expectations, there is one truth that is as simple as it is difficult to implement. Your yes only has value when you are willing to say no. It sounds like a cliché, but it is the foundation of all integrity that allows you to maintain yourself in relationships, at work, and in life. As long as we are afraid to say no, we become fodder for the demands, pressure, and exploitation of others. Carl Jung pointed out that fear of rejection is one of the oldest archetypal survival mechanisms in our psyche. Patterns are deeply ingrained in our bodies and minds that teach us that rejection can mean abandonment or even a threat to our emotional security. As a result, we prefer to agree to something that hurts, exhausts us, or breaks our boundaries rather than face potential conflict or rejection. But this silent compromise with ourselves is the beginning of a slow disappearance, the dissolution of our identity and strength. Imagine the moment when you say yes to something you really don't want. It could be a request for extra work that you don't have the energy to do. It could be a relationship that has drained you of joy, but you still agree to it because you are afraid of being alone. It could be agreeing to the expectations of others at the expense of your own peace of mind. Behind every yes, there is an invisible price. It takes away your strength and leads to a growing sense of unfulfillment, frustration, and pain. Jung spoke of the shadow as the part of our psyche that collects everything we repress: anger, regret, fear, and above all, our no. When we do not clearly express our boundaries, the shadow grows and accumulates within us until it finally manifests itself through physical ailments, depression, or outbursts of anger, which we often refer to as uncontrollable. It is the shadow that tries to remind us that saying no is not only a right, but also a necessity. But the fear of this word is powerful, because no is a boundary that cuts off, rejects, says, "You are not important enough to me to fulfill this request." For good people, this sounds like a betrayal of their own nature. After all, goodness is about constant giving, sacrifice, understanding, and accepting others unconditionally. However, Jung teaches that true goodness is not about destroying yourself for others, but about being whole, integral, and conscious with your boundaries, with the courage to say no, with respect for yourself. The metaphor of a garden is worth mentioning here. Imagine that your yes is the plants you nurture, water, and which bloom. Your no is the fence that marks the boundaries of the garden. Without a fence, other plants, weeds, invasive species can grow and dominate the entire area, taking away light, water, and space. Without the courage to set boundaries, your garden will be overgrown and destroyed. And while this may require difficult decisions, it is precisely this that makes it healthy, alive, and real. That is why it is so important to recognize that saying no is not an expression of selfishness, but of self-awareness and self-respect. It is a declaration that your energy is valuable, that you have the right to decide what you devote it to. At the same time, it is an invitation to relationships based on reciprocity and authenticity, not on one-sided giving. In depth psychology, there is no room for pretending or hiding the truth about yourself. When we stop saying no, we give away our power. We give it to others who easily take advantage of it, feeding on our goodwill, weakness, and fear of rejection. In this way, we create a prison from which it is difficult to escape because invisible bonds are formed with each successive yes. On the other hand, saying no is liberating. It is an act of courage that resonates throughout our body and soul. It's like the first breath of fresh air after a long immersion in darkness. It's an invitation to live in harmony with your own truth and energy. And although it may cause anxiety and guilt at first, over time it becomes the key to freedom and authenticity. It is worth asking yourself, where is the no missing in your life today? Where do you agree to something that destroys you because you are afraid of the consequences? What will happen if, for the first time in a long time, you dare to say no and feel that it is not the end of the world, but the beginning of real life? Jung calls on us to stop running away from our shadow, from anger, fear, and that very no. Because only when we learn to set boundaries can we truly give from a place of pure, unforced kindness. Kindness that is not a prison, but a source of strength and healing. So let your yes be conscious and powerful, and your no clear and full of love for yourself. Because as long as you are afraid to say no, people will take advantage of your kindness. And that is the real shadow you must face, not a lack of goodness, but a lack of courage to be yourself. Deep down, good people have a desire to save the world, to help anyone who is suffering, and to be a beacon for the lost. It is a beautiful, even sacred intention, but if unconsciously exaggerated, it turns into a trap. Carl Jung warned that this temptation to save others is often just a mask of the illusion of control, which imprisons and destroys both the good person and those they are trying to save. It is worth pausing for a moment to look at what really lies beneath this universal archetype of the Savior. What lies behind this unquenchable desire to fix the world and other people at all costs? Unfortunately, there is a subtle trap in it. The illusion that you can control what happens to others, that you can change them, heal them, save them. Jung saw this dynamic as an attempt to impose one's will on reality, rather than accepting the natural process of life and development. A good person who falls into this trap often becomes like a god, but a god who tries to control and rule rather than empathize and accompany. This attempt to control causes suffering, because not everyone wants to be saved, not everyone is ready for change, and many people, consciously or unconsciously, take advantage of this kindness to gain something for themselves without giving anything in return. Imagine the ocean. You are a lighthouse on a rock, lighting the way. But the sea, unpredictable, untamed, you cannot stop or change its waves. You cannot stop a storm, nor can you control the fate of the ships that sail on it. It is the same with people. You can help them, light their way, offer support, but you do not have the power to save them or save them from themselves. This awareness is both difficult and liberating. Jung spoke of the shadow as an aspect of our psyche that hides this unconscious need for control. The shadow of the rescuer hides frustration, bitterness, and even anger that arise when our help is rejected or exploited. When we do not see these feelings and accept them as part of ourselves, we risk that over time, kindness will turn into bitter resentment and burnout. In practice, this means that every good person should learn to recognize where their responsibility ends and the free will and lives of others begin. This challenge can be painful because it requires giving up the illusion of omnipotence and total control. But only then can we find true love, free, unforced, based on respect for the autonomy of another person. The love we offer in this way is healing for both ourselves and others. It is not possessive love that wants to change, control, or save at all costs. It is love that allows us to be, even if it means suffering or the downfall of someone close to us. Because true strength lies in trusting life and accepting that each of us must follow our own path, even the most difficult one. It is worth considering where in your life this desire to save others at all costs appears. Do you sometimes try to forcefully fix someone who does not want to be fixed? Do you feel bitter when your help is not appreciated or is taken advantage of? This is a sign that you are on the threshold of your shadow, which needs your attention and integration. When you accept that you are not responsible for everyone, you no longer have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You can focus on what is really important. Your authentic goodness that flows from wholeness and wisdom. Goodness that does not burn out, does not destroy, but heals. Goodness that knows its limits and is not afraid to say enough only. When you stop rescuing others from their illusion of control, will you begin to truly love with respect, freedom, and truth. And only then will you gain the strength to remain as that light in the darkness, without losing yourself. In a world of good people, there is often a belief that a person's value is measured by the amount of sacrifice they are willing to make for others. It's like an invisible account that we constantly add to our soul's balance. How many times have you given up on yourself to help others? How many times have you swallowed your own pain so as not to cause trouble for your loved ones? How many times have you hidden your needs to make those you love happy? Carl Jung reminds us that such sacrifice, if one-sided and unconscious, can become a source of enormous suffering and withdrawal into oneself. This is not heroism, it is rather a silent self-destruction that leads to inner devastation and, ultimately, to the loss of one's identity. Sacrifice is not a virtue in itself if it destroys the foundation of your existence. If you extinguish your light every day to illuminate the path for others, you will eventually become a shadow of your own self, invisible to the world and sometimes even to yourself. Jung pointed out that kindness without balance and self-awareness can turn into toxic sacrifice that exhausts and isolates. Imagine a tree that constantly gives its sap to other plants without caring for its own roots. Over time, it will become dry, brittle, and eventually die. The same is true of a person who constantly sacrifices themselves. Sooner or later, they will lose their inner life, their health, their energy. So it's worth asking yourself, does your sacrifice come from a place of love and power, or from a sense of duty, fear of rejection, or a desire to be needed? Jung taught that true strength comes from integrity, from being at peace with yourself, accepting your own limits and needs. In practice, this means having the courage to say no without guilt when something is harmful to your soul. It is the ability to nurture yourself with the same care you give to others. It is the ability to take care of your own sources of energy so that you do not exhaust yourself in the name of kindness. We often encounter the image of a person who sacrifices everything for others and is admired for it. But Jung warns that this archetype of the suffering hero is a shadow trap. Behind this mask lies deep loneliness, anger, and a feeling of being unnoticed. Kindness that destroys ceases to be good. It becomes a weapon against oneself. What appears to be sacrifice is often a form of self-aggression because it cuts us off from our true power and freedom. Integrating this truth is a step towards wholeness. It is accepting that your value does not depend on how much you give to others, but on who you are in your entirety, with all your needs, weaknesses, and strengths. When you learn to love yourself unconditionally, you will understand that true kindness comes from that love. Not from sacrificing yourself to exhaustion, but from the ability to give from a full, overflowing cup. Only then can you truly help others, because your energy will no longer be draining away, but flowing from a place of health and balance. And only then will your presence become a true gift, not a burden. So, good person, do you dare to stop and ask yourself, does my sacrifice strengthen me or exhaust me? Do I love myself enough to give to others from a place of fullness, not from a place of lack? This question is the beginning of your true transformation. According to Jung, in the depths of the human soul, goodness is not just an act of gentleness or kindness towards the world. It is an energy that also has its shadow, a darker side, a force, an instinct, a boundary that must be set so as not to be crushed by the brutality of reality. Goodness without a shadow is goodness without the power to defend itself. It is naive goodness that becomes a victim rather than a force. Imagine the ocean, beautiful, blue, calm on the surface, but hiding powerful currents and deep secrets beneath. Goodness without a shadow is like the surface of that ocean, which is devoid of depth, easy to be ravaged by any storm. Meanwhile, the shadow is precisely those currents and forces hidden in the depths. It is our primal power, our survival instinct, the strength of our boundaries and defenses. When we ignore this dark side of ourselves, we put ourselves at risk of becoming victims. Jung taught that the shadow is not only the evil we fear, but also a source of energy that can protect and strengthen us. It is in the shadow that righteous anger, the survival instinct, and the voice of inner truth reside. When a good person rejects their shadow, they lose access to this power, become vulnerable, and begin to attract predators. People who sense their weakness and exploit it for their own ends. The powerlessness that comes from not having a shadow is like a lighthouse, attracting not only those who are looking for help, but also those who want to sink the ship. It's a trap where kindness becomes a lure instead of a shield. Predatory people, emotional parasites, manipulators, people hurt by their own shadows, sense and exploit this vulnerability. But why is this the case? Why does powerlessness attract those who want to take advantage? In Jungian psychology, this is related to the archetypes of the giver and the taker. When the giver loses touch with their power, they become a good victim, someone who gives without awareness and without limits. Such people often unconsciously send out signals of weakness, which stimulates the predator archetype, who wants to conquer, exploit, and control. In interpersonal relationships, this is particularly dangerous because instead of building authentic closeness, a code of toxic emotional dependence is created. The good person with a neglected shadow begins to be exploited, and their energy is drained. In this way, goodness loses its power and becomes a curse. Jung emphasizes that shadow integration is not only a necessity, but also an act of courage that allows for a fuller experience of oneself. Through acceptance and conscious encounter with their shadow, the good person regains not only power, but also freedom. They can set boundaries, distinguish authentic relationships from toxic ones, and build healthy bonds. Kindness integrated with the shadow is kindness that can say no, that can defend its territory while remaining open and compassionate. It is kindness that is like a tree, strong, deeply rooted, but ready to provide shade and bear fruit. Such kindness has the power to transform, protect, and heal because it comes from wholeness, not from fragmentation. Jung once said that awareness of the shadow is the first step towards wisdom. Without this awareness, without acceptance of one's own darkness, kindness becomes an illusion, beautiful but fragile and easy to break. Therefore, good person, If you feel powerless, ask yourself, are you rejecting your shadow? Are you afraid of your power, your dark side? Do you allow others to take advantage of your kindness because you are afraid of confrontation? True power lies in wholeness, in accepting both the light and the shadow. Only then can goodness become a force that nothing can break. Sometimes in the thicket of everyday expectations, social pressure, and our own desires to be a good person, we lose something fundamental: ourselves. Carl Jung warned against this trap: kindness that requires you to deny your own truth, suppress pain, ignore boundaries is no longer true kindness. It is a mask, a falsehood, and ultimately a tool of self-destruction. Imagine a person who every day puts on heavy armor, of pretending that everything is fine, that they are always nice, understanding, and infinitely available. This armor is created out of fear of rejection, loneliness, and non-acceptance. But the more we wear it, the further we move away from our core, from our true selves. This person becomes a prisoner of their own kindness, which, instead of protecting them, slowly kills their soul. Jung said that the whole person consists of many aspects: light and dark, gentle and angry, weak and strong. To be truly good, we must be whole. You cannot be good by cutting yourself off from anger, shame, ego, or pain. These are what make up the richness of our psyche and allow us to build authentic relationships. When you try to prove to others that you are good, whether by constantly giving in, submitting, or ignoring your own needs, you are actually signaling to them that you do not believe in your own worth without this proof. This leads to emptiness, because goodness that requires external approval is fragile and fleeting. In Jungian psychology, there is an archetype of shadow and light that must coexist in balance. Suppressing your shadow, anger, sadness, selfishness, leads to your light becoming false, shallow, and superficial. What others see is a mask, and underneath it lies true exhaustion and despair. Kindness that kills the soul is kindness forced by fear, loneliness, and the need for control and acceptance. It is not a gift, it is a curse. Jung emphasized that true healing and strength come when you dare to be a whole person, with pain and joy, light and shadow. Preserving yourself, your authentic self, requires courage. It requires a willingness to be rejected, to be unaccepted, to confront your own demons. But only then does your kindness gain real power, not as a weakness, but as an expression of wholeness and truth. Good person, if you feel like you are losing yourself because you are trying too hard to prove your worth through kindness, stop. Ask yourself, does this kindness come from love for yourself or from a need to be accepted? Are you being yourself, or are you just playing a role that someone else has imposed on you? Only when you do not lose yourself can you truly give to others. Because kindness that hurts the soul is a contradiction of everything that is good. True kindness comes from wholeness, from the courage to be real, from accepting your weaknesses and strengths, from living consciously. Jung left us this lesson as a warning and a hope. Let your kindness be a light that never goes out, because it is fed by the fullness of your being, not by fear or falsehood. Only then will it become a bridge, not walls. Healing, not a wound.